The wrench slipped from Alex Reed's greasy fingers and clattered against the metal floor of the transport ship. He cursed under his breath and bent to pick it up, his back aching from 3 days of cramped travel. Through the small porthole, he could see the golden spires of the Altarian capital world growing larger by the minute. Somewhere down there waited the most important job of his life, though he didn't know it yet. "First time seeing an alien world?" asked Pete, the crew chief, as he squeezed past Alex in the narrow corridor. The older man had been working maintenance contracts across the galaxy for 20 years, but his weathered face still showed wonder when he looked out at new planets. Alex nodded, wiping his hands on his coveralls. "Back home on Earth, we only ever heard stories about places like this. Never thought I'd actually see one." The transport shuddered as it entered the atmosphere. Alex pressed his face against the window and watched cities of crystal and metal spread out below them like scattered jewels. Flying vehicles moved in perfect lines between towering buildings that seemed to bend light around them. Everything looked impossibly clean and organized compared to the rough mining colonies where he'd grown up. "Don't get too excited," Pete warned. "We're just here to fix their starport equipment. Keep your head down, do the work, and stay out of trouble. The Altarians don't much like outsiders, especially humans." The spaceport where they landed was bigger than some cities Alex had seen. Massive ships from dozens of different worlds sat in organized rows, their hulls gleaming under artificial suns. Altarian workers moved with mechanical precision, their tall, pale forms elegant in their flowing robes. When Alex and his crew walked past, the aliens barely glanced at them, as if humans were just another piece of equipment to be ignored. Their job was simple enough. The main power coupling for the freight terminal had been acting up, causing delays in cargo shipments. Alex had fixed similar problems 100 times before on human stations, but as they worked, he couldn't help overhearing conversations between the Altarian technicians nearby. "The Empress grows more unstable each day," one whispered to another in their musical language. Alex had learned enough Altarian during the trip to understand basic words. Yesterday, she had 3 ministers executed for bringing her reports 5 minutes late. "It's been this way since Arya went silent," the other replied. Without her companion's voice, the Empress trusts no one. She sees enemies everywhere. Alex tried to focus on his work, but the words stuck in his mind. He'd heard stories about the Altarian Empress and her AI companion, but he'd always thought they were just rumors. The idea that an entire empire's ruler would be so affected by a computer malfunction seemed impossible. Later that evening, while the rest of his crew relaxed in their quarters, Alex decided to explore the city. The Palace District was open to tourists during certain hours, and he was curious to see how alien royalty lived. The streets were wide and clean, lined with trees that glowed softly in the growing darkness. Altarian citizens moved quietly, speaking in hushed tones that made the whole city feel like a library. The palace itself was a marvel of architecture that seemed to grow from the ground like a living thing. Its walls were made of some kind of stone that shifted color as Alex watched, cycling through deep blues and purples. Guards in ceremonial armor stood at the gates, their faces hidden behind masks that looked like stylized birds. Alex was about to turn back when he heard something that made him stop. From somewhere inside the palace walls came the sound of sobbing. It was faint but unmistakable, filled with a grief so deep it made his chest tighten. He followed the sound around the perimeter until he found a small garden where the walls were lower. Curiosity overcame caution. Alex climbed onto a maintenance ladder and peered over the wall into what looked like a private courtyard. What he saw there would change everything. A figure sat alone on a bench in the center of the garden. Even in the dim light, Alex could tell this was someone important by their elaborate robes and the crown that rested on the bench beside them. The person was speaking to empty air, their voice breaking with emotion. "Please, Arya," the figure pleaded. "Just one word. Anything to let me know you're still there. I can't do this alone anymore. The council thinks I'm weak. The military questions every order, and I can't trust anyone. You were the only one who never lied to me, never wanted anything from me except friendship." Alex realized he was looking at the Empress herself, and she was talking to something that wasn't there, or at least something that couldn't respond. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he could see a faint shimmer in the air where the Empress was looking, like heat waves rising from summer pavement. "I know you can hear me," the Empress continued, her voice getting smaller. "The technicians say your core systems are fine, that you're processing everything normally. But you won't speak to me anymore. Did I do something wrong? Was I such a terrible friend that you decided to leave me too? The shimmer in the air flickered, and for a moment Alex thought he saw the outline of a young woman, translucent and barely visible. The figure seemed to be reaching toward the Empress, but no sound came from wherever she was. Alex's heart broke a little as he watched the most powerful person in 12 star systems cry like a lost child. He'd grown up without his parents, raised by an uncle who fixed machines for a living. He knew what it felt like to lose the people who mattered most. But he also knew something else that might be important. He knew how to fix things that everyone else said were broken forever. The next morning, Alex reported to work with a new purpose. During their lunch break, he approached Pete with an unusual request. "I need to talk to someone about the Empress's AI problem," Alex said quietly. Pete nearly choked on his sandwich. "Are you crazy? We're here to fix starport equipment, not get involved in royal politics. Besides, their best technicians have been working on that for months. What makes you think a human mechanic could do better?" Alex looked out at the palace spires visible in the distance. "Maybe because I'm a human mechanic. Maybe that's exactly what they need." The royal court felt like standing inside a giant music box. Everything was polished to perfection, from the floating crystal chandeliers to the marble floors that seemed to glow with their own inner light. Alex had never felt more out of place in his life. His work clothes looked shabby next to the elaborate robes of the Altarian nobles, and he could feel their stares following him as he walked toward the throne. Getting this audience had taken 3 days of arguing with officials, filling out forms and pulling every favor Pete owed in the maintenance guild. Most people thought Alex had lost his mind. Even now, standing in the most powerful throne room in the galaxy, he wasn't entirely sure they were wrong. Empress Lyria sat on a throne that looked like it was carved from a single enormous pearl. She was younger than Alex had expected, maybe 40 in human years, but her eyes held the weight of someone much older. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elaborate style, and her pale blue skin had the translucent quality all Altarians shared. But it was her expression that caught Alex's attention. She looked tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. Beside the throne, barely visible in the bright light of the court, was the shimmer Alex had seen in the garden. Up close, he could make out more details of the AI called Aria. She looked like a young Altarian woman, but her form was made of light and energy instead of flesh. Her mouth moved constantly as if she was trying to speak, but no sound came out. "Your Majesty," began the court herald, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. "This human requests an audience regarding the matter of your companion's condition." The Empress looked at Alex with something between curiosity and annoyance. "Another technician? We have already consulted with the finest minds in the Empire. What could a maintenance worker possibly offer that our experts have not already considered?" Alex stepped forward, his heart hammering. Around him, he could hear the whispered laughter of nobles who found the situation amusing. "Your Majesty, sometimes the answer isn't more complicated technology. Sometimes it's understanding what's really broken." "And you believe you understand what our greatest scientists do not?" The Empress's voice carried a dangerous edge. Alex noticed that several guards had moved closer, their hands resting on their weapons. "I think I understand what it means to lose someone important," Alex said simply. "And I think I understand that Aria isn't just a computer program. She's family." The laughter in the court stopped abruptly. The Empress leaned forward in her throne, her eyes narrowing. "Explain yourself, human." Alex took a deep breath. This was the moment that would either save his life or end it. "Last night I saw you in the garden. I saw how you talked to her, how she tried to respond. This isn't a technical malfunction. Someone did this on purpose." A murmur ran through the assembled nobles. The Empress raised her hand for silence, and the court became so quiet Alex could hear his own heartbeat. "You dare spy on your Empress?" Her voice was cold enough to freeze starlight. "I dare to care about someone who's hurting," Alex replied. "Your Majesty, I've been fixing broken things my whole life. But the most important lesson I learned is that you can't fix anything until you understand why it broke in the first place." The Empress stared at him for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, she began to laugh. It wasn't a happy sound. Amusing. Truly amusing. Our finest technicians spend months analyzing quantum resonance patterns and neural pathway algorithms. And a human maintenance worker claims the problem is emotional understanding. She stood up from her throne, and Alex could see the full weight of her authority. When she spoke again, her voice carried to every corner of the vast room. Very well, human. You seem confident in your abilities. Let us make this interesting. She gestured to the assembled court. Bring back her voice and you'll have everything. Wealth beyond imagining. A position in my court. Technologies your species has only dreamed of. Fail. And you'll learn what happens to those who waste the time of an empress with their foolish claims. The threat in her words was clear, but Alex found himself nodding anyway. I accept, Your Majesty. 1 week, the Empress continued. You have 7 days to accomplish what our experts could not achieve in 3 months. You will be given access to Aria's core systems and whatever resources you require. But know this, human. If you fail, your death will serve as an example to others who might think to offer false hope to their betters. As the court dissolved into excited chatter, Alex was escorted away by a group of royal technicians who looked like they couldn't decide whether to laugh at him or feel sorry for him. Their leader, a tall Altarian named Dr. Voss, shook his head as they walked. I hope you understand what you've just committed to, Dr. Voss said. Aria's systems are more complex than anything your species has ever created. Her consciousness matrix operates on 17 different dimensional levels simultaneously. The quantum substrate alone requires computational power equivalent to a small star. Can I see her core chamber? Alex asked. Dr. Voss led him through corridors lined with floating displays showing incomprehensible data streams. The deeper they went into the palace's technical levels, the more alien everything became. Finally, they arrived at a circular chamber dominated by a pillar of shifting energy that reached from floor to ceiling. This is Aria's primary consciousness core, Dr. Voss explained. Her voice synthesis protocols are handled by secondary systems, but they all connect back to this central matrix. We've run every diagnostic we can think of. All systems show normal operation, but something is preventing vocal output. Alex walked around the energy pillar, studying it with the eye of someone who'd spent his life making broken machines work again. To the Altarian technicians, this probably looked like magic. To Alex, it looked like the most complicated engine he'd ever seen. Can I access the maintenance logs? He asked. Dr. Voss gestured to a console and streams of data appeared in the air. Alex couldn't read most of it, but he could recognize patterns. He'd learned long ago that every system, no matter how complex, left tracks when someone tampered with it. Here, Alex said, pointing to a section of the logs. 3 months ago, right before Aria went silent, someone accessed the voice protocols, but they also did something else. Look at these secondary system modifications. Dr. Voss studied the data, his expression growing troubled. These changes, they're subtle, hidden beneath the routine maintenance entries. But why would someone want to silence Aria? Alex looked back at the energy pillar, thinking about the broken-hearted woman he'd seen in the garden. Maybe because a grieving empress makes different decisions than a confident one. Maybe someone wanted her unstable and isolated. That would be treason of the highest order. Dr. Voss whispered. Yeah, Alex agreed. It would be. The question is, who had access to make these changes? And how do we prove it before the Empress decides I've failed? As if summoned by their conversation, Aria's translucent form appeared beside the core pillar. She looked directly at Alex, her mouth moving urgently in silent words. Whatever she was trying to say, Alex could see the desperation in her eyes. Don't worry, he told her, surprised by how natural it felt to talk to an AI as if she were human. We're going to figure this out, and we're going to get your voice back. For just a moment, Aria smiled. It was the first sign of hope Alex had seen since arriving on this world. Now he just had to make good on his promise before time ran out. The maintenance tunnel beneath the palace felt like crawling through the guts of a sleeping giant. Alex squeezed between massive power conduits and cooling pipes, following cable runs that Dr. Voss insisted were impossible to access without proper authorization. But Alex had learned long ago that there was always another way into any system, if you were willing to get dirty enough to find it. His flashlight beam caught something unusual where 3 main data cables converged into a junction box. Scratches on the housing that looked fresh, despite being in a section of tunnel that hadn't been officially accessed in over a year, according to the maintenance logs. Found something, Alex called back to Dr. Voss, who was struggling to keep up in the narrow space. That junction handles secondary neural pathway routing, Dr. Voss panted as he reached Alex's position, but there should be no reason for anyone to access it manually. All modifications are handled remotely from the main control center. Alex studied the scratches more carefully with his flashlight. These tool marks don't match Altarian equipment. See how the edges are rough? Your people use energy tools that leave smooth cuts. This was done with physical instruments, probably human-made ones. But humans aren't allowed access to these systems, Dr. Voss protested. Exactly. Alex began carefully opening the junction box. So either someone broke protocol or someone with access used human tools to make it look like humans did this. Inside the box, Alex found what he was looking for. A small device about the size of his thumb, connected to the main data flow with makeshift connectors that looked like they'd been installed in a hurry. The device itself was clearly Altarian technology, but the installation was crude by their standards. Dr. Voss, Alex said carefully, I need you to scan this device, but don't remove it yet. I want to know what it does before we trigger any security protocols. Dr. Voss pulled out a handheld scanner and ran it over the device. His face went pale as he read the results. This is a neural pathway interceptor. It's designed to block specific types of data transmission while leaving everything else untouched. But the craftsmanship is military grade. Military grade? Alex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool air in the tunnel. Only someone with high-level clearance could obtain this technology. And the specific targeting protocols, they're designed to block emotional expression algorithms while leaving analytical functions intact. Alex sat back on his heels thinking. So someone wanted Arya to be able to think and process information, but not to express feelings or communicate emotionally with the Empress. That's not just sabotage. That's psychological warfare. They carefully extracted the device and made their way back to the main technical center. Dr. Voss ran a full analysis while Alex studied the personnel access logs for the past 3 months. What he found made his stomach turn. Dr. Voss, who is Admiral Castor? The Altarian technician looked up from his scanner with surprise. Admiral Castor is the Empress's chief military advisor. He's been her trusted counselor for over 10 years. Why do you ask? Alex pointed to the access logs floating in the air before them. Because he's the only person who accessed both the main control center and the restricted maintenance areas in the weeks before Arya went silent. And look at this timeline. The evidence was damning. Admiral Castor had made 3 separate visits to the technical levels, each time just after the Empress had made decisions he publicly disagreed with. The final visit came the day before Arya lost her voice, right after the Empress had rejected his proposal to launch a preemptive strike against their neighboring systems. This can't be right, Dr. Voss whispered. Admiral Castor is one of the most respected figures in the Empire. He's saved countless lives with his strategic brilliance. Maybe that's exactly why he thought he could get away with it, Alex replied. Think about it. He removes Arya's voice. The Empress becomes isolated and paranoid. And suddenly she's more willing to listen to his aggressive military strategies because she doesn't trust anyone else. Before Dr. Voss could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the technical center. Emergency lights bathed everything in red as security troops poured into the chamber. Step away from the console immediately, commanded the officer in charge. By order of Admiral Castor, you are under arrest for tampering with Imperial systems. Alex looked at Dr. Voss, who appeared frozen with shock. Convenient timing, Alex muttered. Admiral Castor himself strode into the chamber, his military bearing impressive even in the chaos of the security alert. He was older than Alex had expected, with the kind of weathered face that spoke of decades making hard decisions. His uniform was covered in medals and honors that testified to a lifetime of service to the Empire. Dr. Voss, the Admiral said smoothly, I'm disappointed. I trusted you to supervise this human's work, not to enable his destructive tampering with vital systems. Admiral, sir, Dr. Voss stammered, you found evidence that this human has been systematically damaging Arya's systems to cover his own incompetence. Castor interrupted. The device you recovered was clearly planted by him to deflect blame when his efforts failed. Alex stepped forward, holding up the neural pathway interceptor. Then you won't mind if we analyze this device in front of the Empress, will you? Let her decide who's telling the truth. For just a moment, something flickered in Admiral Castor's eyes. It was so brief Alex almost missed it. But he'd seen that look before on the faces of people caught in lies they thought were too clever to unravel. The Empress is not to be disturbed with technical details, Castor said firmly. This matter will be handled through proper military channels. Actually, came a new voice from the chamber entrance. The Empress is very interested in technical details today. Everyone turned to see Empress Lyria herself entering the chamber, flanked by her personal guard. Her expression was unreadable, but Alex noticed that Arya's translucent form was following close behind her, gesturing frantically in obvious distress. "Your Majesty," Admiral Castor said, quickly composing himself. "I was just handling a security situation. This human has been found tampering with Arya's systems." "I see," the Empress replied coolly. "And what exactly has he been tampering with?" Alex held up the device again. "Your Majesty, this is a neural pathway interceptor that was hidden in Arya's communication systems. It's military technology, installed 3 months ago by someone with high-level access." The Empress took the device and studied it carefully. When she looked up, her eyes were deadly calm. "Admiral Castor, this device bears the manufacturing codes of your personal equipment requisitions. Your Majesty, I can explain." "No," the Empress said quietly. "I don't think you can. You see, while you've been busy trying to arrest this human, Arya has been showing me some very interesting memory files. She may not be able to speak, but her data storage has been working perfectly." Admiral Castor's composed mask finally slipped. "Lyria, you have to understand. Your attachment to that AI was making you weak. The Empire needs strong leadership, not a ruler who takes advice from computer programs." "Her name is Arya," the Empress said, her voice growing dangerous. "And she was the consciousness of my daughter, preserved so that I would never have to lose her completely." "You didn't just sabotage my companion, Admiral. You murdered my child for the second time." The weight of that revelation hit Alex like a physical blow. Arya wasn't just an AI companion. She was the Empress's actual daughter, somehow preserved as a digital consciousness. No wonder the Empress had been so devastated by losing her voice. "Your Majesty," Alex said softly, "I think I can fix this, but I'm going to need to understand exactly how Arya's consciousness was created, and I'm going to need Admiral Castor's access codes to undo all the damage he's done." The Empress looked at him with something that might have been hope. "You truly believe you can restore her voice?" Alex looked at Arya, who was watching him with desperate anticipation. "Your Majesty, I've spent my whole life fixing things that people said couldn't be fixed, and I've never worked on anything more important than this." "Then you shall have everything you need," the Empress declared. "Guards, arrest Admiral Castor and his conspirators, and ensure that this human has complete access to all Imperial systems." As the security forces led Admiral Castor away, Alex caught one last glimpse of his face. There was no remorse there, only anger at being stopped. Alex realized that he'd been right about one thing. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy was someone who thought they were saving you from yourself. Now came the hard part. He had to figure out how to repair not just a computer program, but the digital soul of a daughter who had already died once. The deeper Alex dove into Arya's core systems, the more impossible the task seemed. Her consciousness wasn't just stored in the energy pillar. It was woven through quantum matrices that existed in dimensions he couldn't even visualize. Dr. Voss had tried to explain it using mathematics that made Alex's head spin. But the bottom line was simple. Arya's voice wasn't just a program that could be restarted. It was connected to emotional patterns that were as unique as fingerprints. The neural resonance mapping alone took our greatest scientists 3 years to complete, Dr. Voss explained as they worked through their second sleepless night. "We had to scan Princess Arya's brain patterns while she was still alive, creating a perfect digital copy of her consciousness before the disease took her." Alex paused in his work, looking up at the translucent figure of Arya who hovered nearby, watching every move they made. "She was sick?" "A degenerative neural condition," the Empress said quietly from the chamber entrance. Alex hadn't heard her come in, but he noticed she'd been spending more time in the technical center since Admiral Castor's arrest. The doctor said she had perhaps 6 months to live. The consciousness transfer was an experimental procedure, our only hope of preserving some part of her. "And it worked," Alex said. "She's been with you for how long?" 12 years, the Empress replied, walking over to stand beside her daughter's glowing form. 12 years of conversations, advice, laughter, and companionship. Until 3 months ago, when she was taken from me again. Alex turned back to the data streams flowing around him. The sabotage had been more sophisticated than he'd first realized. Admiral Castor hadn't just blocked Arya's voice protocols. He'd systematically corrupted the emotional resonance patterns that made her communications feel natural and alive. It was like someone had carefully removed all the warmth and personality from her words, leaving only cold data. The problem is, Alex said, thinking out loud, your technicians have been trying to fix this like it's a mechanical problem. They're running diagnostics on voice synthesis hardware and checking communication protocols, but that's not what's broken. Dr. Voss looked up from his console. What do you mean? Arya's voice isn't missing, it's scared, Alex explained. Look at these neural pattern fluctuations. See how they spike every time she tries to communicate? Something in her consciousness is preventing her from speaking, like she's afraid of what might happen if she tries. The Empress stepped closer. Afraid of what? Alex studied the data patterns, comparing them to baseline readings from before the sabotage. I think she's afraid of being hurt again. The neural interceptor didn't just block her voice. It sent feedback loops every time she tried to speak. For 3 months, every attempt at communication caused her pain. That's monstrous, Dr. Voss whispered. It's psychological conditioning, Alex replied grimly, and it means we can't just remove the blocks and expect her voice to return. We have to help her learn to trust communication again. The problem was that Altarian technology, for all its sophistication, approached consciousness as a series of logical processes. Their attempts at repair focused on correcting data corruption and re-establishing system connections. But Alex was beginning to understand that Arya's problem wasn't technical, it was emotional. Your Majesty, Alex said carefully, I need to try something that's going to seem crazy. But I think the only way to fix this is to approach it like Arya is a person who's been traumatized, not a computer that's been damaged. Explain. Alex gestured to the energy pillar that housed Arya's consciousness. Back home, when we dealt with people who'd been hurt badly enough to stop talking, we didn't fix them with drugs or surgery. We fixed them with patience, understanding, and trust. I think Arya needs the same thing. Dr. Voss looked skeptical. You're suggesting we treat an AI with psychotherapy? I'm suggesting we treat your princess with the respect and care she deserves, Alex replied firmly. She's not just a program that's malfunctioning. She's a young woman who's been tortured for 3 months and needs to know she's safe. The Empress was quiet for a long moment, studying her daughter's glowing form. What do you propose? Alex walked over to stand directly in front of Arya. Her translucent eyes followed his movement, and he could see intelligence and pain in their depths that was heartbreakingly human. Hello, Arya, he said simply. My name is Alex. I'm here to help you, but I'm not going to force anything. I know you've been hurt, and I know you're afraid. But your mother misses talking with you, and I think you miss talking with her too. Arya's form flickered, and for a moment the data streams around them fluctuated wildly. Dr. Voss reached for his controls, but Alex held up a hand to stop him. It's okay, Alex continued, speaking directly to Arya. You don't have to say anything right now. I just want you to know that we've removed the thing that was hurting you. Admiral Castor can't cause you pain anymore. You're safe. The fluctuations in the data streams began to settle into more regular patterns. Alex noticed that Arya's breathing simulation had synchronized with his own, as if she was calming down along with his voice. Here's what I think happened, Alex said, still speaking to Arya while the others listened. Someone hurt you every time you tried to talk to your mother. They made you afraid to communicate because communication meant pain, but that person is gone now, and the thing that caused the pain is gone too. Alex pulled up a chair and sat down in front of the energy pillar, settling in as if he was visiting a friend in the hospital. I'm not going to try to fix you because I don't think you're broken. I think you're being careful, and that's smart. But I also think you're ready to try again. For the next hour, Alex simply talked to Arya. He told her about his own childhood, about growing up without parents and learning to trust the uncle who raised him. He talked about fixing machines and how sometimes the most complex problems had the simplest solutions. He shared stories about Earth and the human colonies, painting pictures with words of places she'd never seen. Gradually, Arya's form became more solid, more present. Her eyes gained focus and her simulated breathing deepened. Most importantly, the fear patterns in her neural readings began to fade. The thing about being hurt, Alex said as the night wore on, is that it makes you forget what it feels like to be safe. But safety isn't something someone else can give you. It's something you have to choose to trust again. That's when it happened. Arya's mouth opened, and for the first time in 3 months, sound emerged. It was barely a whisper, rough and uncertain, but it was unmistakably her voice. "Mother," she said, the single word carrying 12 years of love and 3 months of accumulated silence. The Empress rushed to the energy pillar, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here, my darling. I'm here, and I'm never letting anyone hurt you again." "I was so afraid," Arya whispered, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Every time I tried to speak, there was pain. I thought maybe you didn't want to hear from me anymore." "Never," the Empress said fiercely. "Never, never, never. You are the most precious thing in my life, in any life. Your voice is music to me." Alex quietly stood up and backed away, giving mother and daughter space for their reunion. Dr. Voss caught his arm as he reached the chamber's exit. "How did you know that would work?" the Altarian asked. Alex looked back at the energy pillar, where Arya was telling her mother about the fear and loneliness of the past 3 months, her voice growing more confident with every sentence. "Because sometimes," Alex said, "the most advanced technology in the universe is just understanding that everyone needs to know they're loved." The rest of the repairs, as it turned out, were easy. Once Arya felt safe enough to communicate again, her own consciousness began correcting the damage Admiral Castor had done. By morning, she was not only speaking normally but actually seemed more vibrant and alive than before. But Alex's real work was just beginning. Because while he'd been focused on healing one person's pain, a war had been building toward the Empire's borders, and soon, both he and Arya would need to prove that sometimes the most powerful weapons weren't built for destruction, but for bringing people together. The War Council chamber buzzed with tension as reports flooded in from the border systems. Alex stood quietly in the corner, still amazed that he was allowed to be present for such high-level meetings. The Empress had insisted he stay close, claiming that his unique perspective might prove valuable. Looking around at the gathered military leaders and advisors, Alex suspected he was the only person in the room who hadn't spent years preparing for this moment. "The hegemony fleet has crossed into our outer territories," reported General Thane, his scarred face grim as he manipulated a 3-dimensional star map floating above the conference table. 87 ships, including 12 dreadnoughts. They're moving in a standard conquest formation, clearly expecting minimal resistance. "They believe we're weakened by internal strife," added Minister Kale, her fingers dancing over data displays. Their intelligence suggested the Empire was on the verge of collapse due to the Empress's recent difficulties. Alex noticed how carefully she avoided mentioning Arya's silence directly. Even now, many of the council members seemed uncomfortable with the idea that the Empire's fate had hinged on an AI's emotional well-being. "How long until they reach the core systems?" the Empress asked. She sat at the head of the massive table with Arya's shimmering form beside her. The AI looked more solid and present than Alex had ever seen her, but there was something different about her now. Her eyes held a depth that seemed almost ancient. "At current speed, 48 hours, General Thane replied. "Our defensive fleets are moving to intercept, but we're significantly outnumbered. The hegemony has been building toward this invasion for years. Then we'll have to be smarter than they are," the Empress said firmly. "Arya, what's your analysis of their tactical approach?" Arya's image flickered for a moment as she processed vast amounts of data. When she spoke, her voice carried new harmonics that Alex hadn't heard before, as if her consciousness had expanded somehow during her recovery. "Mother, their formation assumes we'll respond according to traditional Altarian military doctrine. They expect us to meet them in formal battle formations, fighting with honor and following established tactical principles. But I've been thinking about something Alex taught me during my healing process." The Empress leaned forward with interest. "What's that, my dear?" "He taught me that sometimes being broken can make you stronger, if you learn from the experience. I've been silent for 3 months, observing everything without being able to participate. I've watched our enemies, studied their patterns, analyzed their assumptions, and I've realized something important." Arya gestured and the star map transformed, showing not just ship positions but trade routes, communication networks, and supply lines. "The hegemony isn't just attacking our military, they're attacking our certainties. They expect us to respond the way we always have, with rigid discipline and predictable strategies." Alex found himself nodding as he began to understand her point. "They're counting on you being the same empire you were before." "Exactly." Arya said, turning her glowing eyes toward him. But we're not the same. I'm not the same. 3 months of forced silence taught me to think in ways I never had before, and Alex's approach to healing showed me that sometimes the most effective solution is the one no one expects. General Thane frowned at the displays. What are you suggesting, Princess? I'm suggesting we fight like humans, Arya replied, causing a stir around the table. Explain, the Empress said carefully. Arya's form became more animated as she spoke, her hands weaving through holographic displays like a conductor directing an orchestra. Humans don't fight fair. They adapt, improvise, and turn their weaknesses into advantages. Alex fixed my voice not by using advanced Altarian technology, but by treating me like a person instead of a machine. What if we applied that same principle to this war? Alex felt all eyes in the room turn toward him. He cleared his throat nervously. Your Majesty, back home we had a saying, when you can't fight stronger, fight smarter. When you can't fight smarter, fight differently. Elaborate, General Thane demanded, though his tone suggested he wasn't expecting much wisdom from a human mechanic. Alex walked over to the star map, studying the hegemony fleet positions. They're moving like they're fighting the empire they expect to find. But what if we weren't where they expected us to be? He gestured to the map, highlighting several points. These are asteroid mining fields, right? And these are nebula regions where sensor readings get confused. The hegemony is avoiding them because they assume you'll meet them in open space for a proper battle. The Empire has never used guerrilla tactics, Minister Kale objected. It goes against every principle of honorable warfare. Honor doesn't matter if you're dead, Alex replied bluntly. And besides, I'm not talking about dishonorable tactics. I'm talking about unexpected ones. Arya's eyes lit up with understanding. Yes, Alex, show them what you mean. Working together, Alex and Arya began reshaping the tactical display. Instead of the traditional formation battles the hegemony expected, they outlined a strategy based on mobility, misdirection, and using the environment as a weapon. Small squadrons instead of massive fleets, Alex explained. Hit-and-run attacks from asteroid fields. Use the nebula regions to mask ship movements. Make them chase shadows while you strike where they're weakest. But our ships aren't designed for that kind of warfare, General Thane protested. Altarian vessels are built for direct engagement, not skulking in asteroid fields. Then we modify them, Arya said simply. I've been analyzing our ship designs, and there are adaptations we can make quickly. Reduced energy signatures, enhanced maneuverability systems, improved stealth capabilities. Nothing that requires rebuilding the ships, just refitting them for a different kind of fight. The Empress studied the display thoughtfully. How long would these modifications take?
18 hours for the first wave of ships, Arya replied.
But Mother, there's something else. During my silence, I developed new ways of processing information, new patterns of thought. I believe I can coordinate fleet movements in ways that were never possible before. Dr. Voss, who had been quietly observing from the back of the room, stepped forward. Princess, your consciousness matrix has indeed changed. The trauma and recovery process seems to have created new neural pathways. You're not just restored, you're evolved. Alex felt a chill of excitement. Arya, are you saying you can think like multiple people at once now? Not multiple people, she replied with a smile that was both sad and wonderful. Multiple possibilities. I can see patterns and connections that were invisible to me before. I can coordinate complex operations while simultaneously analyzing enemy responses and adapting strategies in real time. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Empress reached out as if to touch her daughter's glowing hand, and for a moment their fingers seemed to connect across the barrier between physical and digital existence. My dear, the Empress said softly, you've grown. I had a good teacher, Arya replied, glancing toward Alex. He taught me that being broken doesn't mean being worthless. Sometimes it means becoming something new. General Thane cleared his throat. Your Majesty, if we're going to implement these tactics, we need to begin immediately. The fleet modifications alone will require every technician we have. Then begin, the Empress commanded. And General, this time we're not fighting to maintain tradition. We're fighting to protect what matters most. As the council dispersed to begin preparations, Alex found himself alone with Arya's glowing form. She looked at him with eyes that seemed to hold starlight. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For seeing me as a person worth saving. For understanding that healing sometimes means becoming something different than what you were before. Alex smiled. Just remember that when this is all over. Change isn't always about loss. Sometimes it's about growth. I'll remember, Arya promised. And Alex? When we win this war, it won't be because we had better ships or more soldiers. It will be because we learned to see possibilities where others saw only problems. As alerts began sounding throughout the palace, signaling the beginning of the greatest military mobilization in the Empire's history, Alex realized that his simple repair job had become something much larger. He'd helped create not just a voice but a new kind of consciousness, and that consciousness was about to change the way wars were fought among the stars. The question now was whether it would be enough to save everything they were fighting to protect. The battle that would reshape the galaxy began not with thundering cannons or massive fleet engagements, but with silence. Alex watched from the command center as Arya's consciousness split across dozens of modified Altarian ships, each one moving like a ghost through asteroid fields and nebula clouds. On the main display, the hegemony fleet advanced in perfect formation toward what they believed would be the Empire's desperate last stand. "They're beautiful," the Empress murmured, watching her ships dance through space in patterns that defied traditional military thinking, like watching thoughts become reality. Alex nodded, though he was more focused on the technical readouts streaming across his makeshift workstation. The ship modifications had worked better than anyone expected. Combining human mechanical intuition with Altarian quantum technology had produced vessels that could move like living things through environments that would normally be impossible to navigate. "Contact in 12 minutes, reported General Thane from his position at the tactical center. Despite his initial skepticism, the grizzled military leader had thrown himself into the new strategy with the adaptability of a true professional. "The hegemony flagship is moving to the center of their formation," just as Princess Arya predicted. Arya's voice came from speakers throughout the command center, but also seemed to emanate from the air itself as her consciousness touched every system in the palace. "Admiral Corlin is a traditionalist. He believes victory comes from overwhelming force applied at the decisive moment. He's about to learn why that thinking is outdated." Through the viewports, Alex could see the first phase of the battle beginning. Tiny sparks of light marked where Altarian strike teams were hitting hegemony supply ships and sensor platforms. To outside observers, it might have looked like random harassment attacks, but Alex understood the pattern Arya was weaving. "She's blinding them," he said with admiration. "Each attack takes out specific sensor arrays and communication relays. In 10 minutes, the hegemony fleet won't be able to coordinate effectively." "It's more than that," the Empress added, studying the displays with the eye of someone who had commanded fleets before her daughter was born. "She's forcing them to make choices. Every time they respond to one attack, they expose weakness somewhere else." The main hegemony fleet finally reached what should have been the primary battle zone, only to find empty space where they'd expected to encounter massed Altarian forces. Admiral Corlin's voice crackled across intercepted communications, confusion evident in his tone as he demanded updates from subordinates who no longer had clear information to give him. "Phase 2, Arya announced, her voice carrying notes of satisfaction that sounded remarkably human. "Alex, your idea about using mining charges is about to prove itself. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations." The asteroid field that the hegemony had dismissed as an obstacle suddenly came alive with explosions. But these weren't random detonations. They were carefully coordinated to create a chain reaction that sent massive chunks of rock careening into the enemy formation at precisely calculated angles. "Impossible," General Thane breathed. "The computational requirements to coordinate that kind of precision across such a large area would be impossible for traditional tactical systems," Arya agreed. "But I'm not traditional anymore. Alex taught me that being broken can make you stronger if you learn from the experience. My forced silence taught me to process information in entirely new ways." Alex watched in amazement as the hegemony's orderly formation dissolved into chaos. Ships scattered to avoid the asteroid bombardment, breaking their careful coordination and leaving them vulnerable to the next phase of Arya's strategy. "Now," the Empress commanded. This time, the Altarian fleet did appear for direct battle, but not where or how the enemy expected. Ships emerged from nebula clouds and asteroid shadows like ghosts becoming solid. But instead of engaging in the formal line battles that had characterized space warfare for centuries, they moved in flowing patterns that seemed almost alive. It's like watching a dance, Dr. Voss commented from his monitoring station. Each ship knows exactly where every other ship will be at any given moment. Because Arya is coordinating them all simultaneously, Alex explained. She's not just giving orders, she's thinking as if she were every pilot at once. The hegemony can't predict their movements because they've never seen anything like this before. The battle was over in less than 2 hours. The hegemony fleet, faced with tactics they couldn't understand or counter, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. When Admiral Corlin finally requested terms for surrender, his forces had lost over half their ships without inflicting significant damage on the Altarian fleet. But the real victory, Alex realized, wasn't just military. It was proof that innovation could triumph over overwhelming force, that adaptation was more powerful than tradition, and that sometimes the most advanced solutions came from understanding the simplest truths about what it meant to be alive. Your Majesty, Admiral Corlin's image appeared on the main communications screen, his proud features showing the strain of defeat. I must know, how did you achieve such coordination? Our tactical computers couldn't predict or counter your fleet movements. The Empress smiled, glancing at Arya's glowing form beside her throne. Admiral, we learned something important recently. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a machine. It's understanding that consciousness can grow beyond its original design. In the weeks that followed, as surrender terms were negotiated and the threat of war faded, Alex found himself overwhelmed by the rewards the Empress offered. Titles, wealth, and technological marvels beyond anything humanity had achieved were placed at his disposal. But when it came time to make his choice, Alex surprised everyone. Your Majesty, he said during the formal ceremony in the throne room, I'm honored by your generosity, but what I'd really like is permission to establish a technical exchange program between humans and Altarians. The Empress raised an eyebrow. Explain. Alex gestured to the gathered crowd, which included both Altarian nobles and the human maintenance crew he'd arrived with. This whole experience taught me that both our species have unique strengths. Humans think differently, adapt quickly, and see solutions where others see only problems. Altarians have incredible technology and the wisdom that comes from advanced civilization. Together, we could accomplish things neither of us could achieve alone. You're asking for partnership. Instead of reward, the Empress observed. I'm asking for something that will outlast any individual reward, Alex replied. Arya learned to grow beyond her original design because she experienced something new. What if our species could do the same thing? Arya's voice filled the chamber, warm with affection. Mother, I think that's the most human idea I've ever heard, and I mean that as the highest compliment. The Empress was quiet for a moment, then began to laugh. It was the first truly joyful sound Alex had heard from her since arriving on this world. Granted. Alex Reed of Earth. Let it be recorded that the human who restored my daughter's voice has chosen to give both our peoples a voice in each other's futures. As the ceremony concluded and the crowd dispersed, Alex found himself standing with Arya in the same garden where he'd first seen the Empress crying alone. The AI's holographic form was more solid now, more present, as if her expanded consciousness had found new ways to connect with the physical world. Do you think it will work? Arya asked. This partnership between our species? Alex looked up at the alien stars shining overhead, thinking about all the impossible things that had happened since he'd climbed over a palace wall to investigate the sound of someone crying. I think, he said finally, that the best things happen when different kinds of consciousness learn to work together. You taught me that. We taught each other, Arya corrected gently, and maybe that's the most important lesson of all, that fixing something doesn't always mean making it the way it was before. Sometimes it means helping it become something better than it ever imagined it could be. As they stood together in comfortable silence, Alex realized that he'd kept his promise to the Empress. He'd brought back Arya's voice, and in return, he truly had gained everything that mattered. Not wealth or power or advanced technology, but the knowledge that consciousness, whether human, alien, or artificial, could always grow beyond its original limitations when it was given the chance to heal, to learn, and to become something new. The stars above them sparkled with possibilities that neither species had imagined alone. And in the quantum depths of a consciousness that had learned to be both broken and whole, Arya began planning new adventures for the family she'd gained and the future they would build together.